Welcome to Get a Word In, a podcast about content marketing. I'm your host, Adam Walker. I'm passionate about sharing stories and knowledge through content, especially in the form of podcasting. In fact, I co-founded Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. On this show, I interview content marketers at some of the top companies in the world and discover what's working for them, what isn't, and most importantly, what's next. So stay tuned and get ready for some great content about content marketing. Joining us on the show today is Derek Thomas. He is the Corporate Vice President of Portfolio Marketing at Blue Yonder. Derek, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Man, I'm looking forward to talking with you, but let's start with you. Kind of give us a quick flyover, like who you are, what you're about, what do your days look like?
Yeah, so I'm Derek Thomas. I am with Blue Yonder. I've been here about a year. I lead portfolio marketing, which is our solutions and industry marketing for the company. I've spent the last 10 plus years in marketing across the automation landscape, the software landscape, really in the supply chain space right now, supply chain SaaS software solutions, which is an incredibly exciting space to be in with all the disruption we've gone through over the last 3 years. I tell you, what an energetic topic in every C-suite across the world right now.
Yeah, man, supply chain is hot right now. So you're right in the thick of it, man. You're in a good spot. It's a good place to be.
Absolutely.
So, all right, well, let's dig into content marketing. Let's just start with the basics. Like, tell me what content is working right now.
The thing that we're seeing most of all with our customer base is that they're coming in better researched than ever before. The pandemic changed the paradigm of, it used to be you would go in and the sales team would engage and they would talk to you about what you need. And that discovery process would happen at the early phases. But we're seeing a dramatic shift that customers are walking in much better informed, educated. They're bringing in much wider buying groups into those decisions. And so really it's the digital consumption. Now, as I'm saying that, at the same time, we're seeing all of our digital content, whether that's social, whether that's website, or whether that's third-party syndicated content, all of that is going gangbusters. But we are seeing, if I think about 2022, late 2022, early 2023, we're seeing a return to some of the in-person big events. Every show we're going to, we're seeing record crowds. And so we're seeing that pent-up hunger of people going to the big ones, saying, I want to learn. Not necessarily all events, though. So it is a little bit of a mix, and we're feeling that out to say, really, what is that audience going to be? But I tell you, the last few that we've been to, last few big trade shows, have been phenomenal for us. So it is a mix. When they're coming in, though, we're having to have a little bit different conversation than we've had in the past, much more higher intent on the buyer side.
So I'm curious, so it sounds like you're dealing with a customer that starts off already more savvy than they did previously. And so does that mean that from a content marketing perspective, have you had to start at a higher level place with some of your content marketing? Or is it that they've already kind of consumed all that base level stuff and it's still helpful to continue to produce that?
We're absolutely having to think across entire funnel, entire buyer life cycle. So we're spending a lot of time talking about what is that real buyer life cycle and where exactly are we coming into it.
Right.
So I would say it just amplified our thinking about that in terms of our activities. What are we doing to generate awareness? And the stuff that we're putting out there on awareness generation is probably a lot earlier in the cycle or a lot earlier in the engagement than what we would typically see. What are we doing in the conversion side? What are we doing in the decision side? So really thinking about the whole decision cycle, but also, it used to be pretty linear. We would go in, we'd get someone new, we'd take them through decision, and then we'd move on to next. We've all seen the charts that turn that more into an infinity loop. Right. So as soon as you get towards the end of the current engagement, you have an opportunity, especially in the SaaS world, to start talking about what am I doing to help support implementation and services? What am I doing to expand into other areas of opportunity that we learn? So it's much more of a continuous process now. So you're always on trying to feed, trying to hear what's the thing that's paying the pain for them, what's keeping them up at night. So a lot more continuous development of storylines as well.
Okay, that's really helpful. I appreciate that. All right, so that's what is working. What is not working anymore? What are you shying away from? What are you dialing down?
I tell you what, what's not working as well, it doesn't mean we're stepping away from it, but we're definitely seeing customers are more hesitant when it comes to to webinars and those kinds of video engagements, there's an element of fatigue. So I don't want to say they're not working, because when you do get them, they can be incredibly powerful, because there's still limitations of travel and people are still more in remote environments now, just as we all changed our lives to accommodate a new paradigm. But what I am seeing is that you can't just go out and blast the world and expect everyone's going to attend your LinkedIn Live or your Zoom webinar or even virtual events. We all get 100 of those every day. Our calendars would be filled with just those. So we've got to be, if we're going to do them, you've got to do the proper work up front to make sure that they want to be there and that you're speaking to them, and you're letting them speak to you. So it really has been an enormous shift there. For a long time, we would just companies in general would just do webinars, and we would say, this is who we are. This is what we do. People don't have time for that anymore. They've already done the research. If they want to know who you are, you better be out there in the digital ecosystem already telling them who you are when they're searching. You got to have your SEO right. You got to have your content right. You cannot walk into a conversation and say, let me introduce you to me. And we're spending a lot more time saying, I want 60% of that conversation to be about you and what do you care about and what are you thinking about? And maybe how do you need to think differently about how you're trying to solve those problems? Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little more abstractly, maybe in ways of solving a problem that changes your business process a little bit. That's the discussion they want to have. They know what you do. By the time you're having that call, they know what you do. They want to know, can you be the right partner? Can you be the trusted partner for me?
So, I mean, again, what you're saying is like they're already coming, like they already know, they're coming to the table educated, informed. They already know, they probably already have an inkling that they like you when they come to the table, right? But I'm curious, like about the webinars.
They took your call, so they're at least willing to hear you.
They're willing to hear you. They're willing to let you talk. But like, so I'm curious about the webinars. Like you said, like people are being more selective. So does that mean that maybe you're getting a slightly smaller audience than you were before, but is it a higher quality audience than it was before? Like, are they more engaged because they're more selective, or how's that working?
Yeah, I mean, when you get a good one, well, I would say it's two paradigms. Sometimes you have one and you'll have an audience that's there and it's okay. And it means that you're off target. I mean, we all do them, and you have people that come into it.
I've been there.
Yeah, they happen. But I would say there are a lot of them. When you hit it out of the park, what you'll notice is you'll have that meeting, and it may be a little smaller, but you'll have such a tremendous conversation. And that's really the read, is the interaction side. Am I doing a virtual engagement, a video engagement where there's a strong, true interaction, not just pocket comments of someone that's out there trying to coattail you, but someone who's really actively engaged in a two-way discussion, whether it's live, whether it's through chat, or whether it's just through other signals that happen through. And there's lots of technology out there now, that are embedded in these platforms. So whether someone's talking or not, you can start to see through the analytics what's going on. And those technologies are really, really valuable right now to say, okay, did I hit the right thing? It may be a one-way presentation, but if I can start to see engagement. I remember I saw one technology not long ago that actually starts to read facial gestures and then anonymizes it, but it starts to give you feedback of, were they paying attention? Or was I looking over here the whole time? Or was I on the
terrifying. Oh my gosh.
And it anonymizes. It doesn't tell you who, it doesn't tell you the details, but it gives you an engagement score. And I tell you what, things like that I do think are important going forward, because you need to know, was my audience paying attention? Because it's hard. We all have multiple monitors sitting around. I mean, I've got 2 monitors here too. It's very easy to be on something and not paying attention. And that's what I want to know is, is that audience, do they care? Are they grabbing their attention? And if I'm not, then I need to rethink what my plan is to grab their attention and what my content is, what my story is.
Man, that sounds terrifying. I mean, great. Like so good to measure your engagement, but just absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's one thing when you're sitting in front of a crowd and you can sort of see their faces and know if they're engaged or not. But if they're live, they kind of have to be engaged. But people really hide behind their screens a lot.
Well, and you can do that, and some people leave their camera off. And there's other tools that you can use of, was I on that active window or was I on other ones? It's if you really think about it, and that is that evolution we're going through, and it is it is finding the right balance there with privacy and with performance information. And so I think a lot of companies are going through that, and some allow it, some don't. But I think it's valuable to know, did it resonate? I mean, again, I could be honest with you, I can have my camera off, but I can tell if that's if that's not the primary window that I'm on. I can look, I was mostly over in my inbox the whole time. Right. And so it just starts to be valuable insight. And I do think that's important as we think about different digital medias going forward, is how strong is engagement? And that's true from content marketing all the way through sales cycles at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the key to content marketing is how strong is engagement. So, all right. So let's talk about channels for a minute. What channels are you seeing success? Are there any channels in your mind that are sort of up and coming that you're excited about, or any channels that maybe you're moving away from?
Well, I mean, it's a B2B environment. So of course, we always think about, where does B2B, and LinkedIn is, of course, a primary channel for us. There are certain digital publications that we know are still trusted news sources, and we lean in with those. And of course, our website. Website is still very, very important. And I think more than anything, we're thinking about how you deliver those personalized experiences. So website to us continues to be a strong investment area. And it's going to be an area we're going to continue to double down. But instead of just taking it and adding more content and more stuff to it, what we're looking at is how do we create personalization and tailoring? How can I take the insight of where you came from and allow that to shape where you land and where you go in a more organic way, as opposed to making you fit whatever taxonomy paradigm we created, right? You're going to come in from all kinds of different angles, and that gives us a lot of insight into who you are. You don't have to tell me who you are. I can tell where you came in the website, generally where you fit in an organization, generally where your interests might be, a lot of times where you might be in an intense cycle. So we're trying to get smarter about how we incorporate those insights into that. So that's a huge investment for us going forward, and then how we wrapper that. If we're going to if you're going to engage with something in LinkedIn, how do I use LinkedIn to feed you to the right place? How do I syndicate content two ways? So for us, those are huge. Now, of course, we're using other tools that are out there to give us intelligence. We're using Drift and other things to be able to see what is coming in. I would say we're also, from a content marketing perspective, in a channel, we're thinking about how does ChatGPT play into this? How does that into the tools we're using to interact with you? Not just content generation, but the interaction element. There's a lot of stuff that we think is on the horizon that can make those interactions more powerful than the traditional scripted bots that are out there. So we do think that's an important play too.
Yeah. No, I love that. And like the whole customizing of the website approach like that, like it's a little shocking if you think about it, how long Amazon has been doing that for its customers. And yet that hasn't really trickled down to like all the rest of us and all the B2B. Like it's still, our sites are still very, very static. And to your point, like different people are coming to the sites for very different reasons. And the site really should morph to that person's needs rather than the person having to morph to the website structure.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing is more blurring of channels as well. That's kind of one of the things I've experienced is a blurring of channels. For a long time, it was like, well, I need to do video. I need to have things on YouTube. Video is still an invaluable tool to help tell your story in a more involved way. But we're being much more intentional, saying, I don't want to just create one video. I need to take that video and create a 5-second, a 20-second, a 60-second, a 2-minute snapshot. And then I need to syndicate that, but I need to have that structured properly so I can feed you through it. So that one asset now gets deployed 4 different places across tools and leads you to conclusion. So we're being much smarter about how we think about those types of engagements.
I mean, that's my whole shtick. You just described my whole thing, man. Like that's all we do. Like we take one podcast and it's like, all right, we got a great podcast episode. We also have the video for YouTube. We also have all the shorts. We also turn them into reels. We also turn them into TikToks. We put them on LinkedIn. I mean, we get like, I don't think I mentioned this to you earlier, but like when your episode's ready to go, I'm going to hand you a whole package of stuff and you can use it or not use it. Like it's totally fine. Like it's good for both of us. So,
absolutely.
I mean, but that's the key is repurposing all these things so that they get used across all of these different platforms, because the content's great. We just have to be ready to package it for each individual platform.
Well, it's really composable content. I think that's, we talk about content channels and content developments, composability of it. We used to create very singular threaded. We had an idea, we created it, it would get used one time and it would go away. But how do we think about assets as reusable tools? How do we think about composability? If I've created things that now I can use at an event, in a blog that we have, in an article that we have on my website, that composability element. It's, and it's funny because we talk about that in the software world all the time, of the composability of your solutions, that, I've got a lot of different ways I need to be able to augment things that are out there, augment things that are in place. Well, I need to do the same thing with my content strategy. I need to augment different channels that are out there in different ways. And I'm bringing them together to package to create maybe a longer term vision, but I also need to be able to break them down to tailor that towards that particular opportunity that we see, or that market, or that point in time. The more I can grab, there's plenty of topics that in the last, just call it in the last 6 months, became big topics. We've written on those for a long time. And so we had to go back and we had to go recraft those. If we built those assets a little differently, we built that content differently, it might have been faster to piece together. So composability becomes important in content marketing.
I love that. I love that concept. Composable content. All right, I'm gonna keep that phrase in my mind. That might become the title of this thing. Yeah, that's a good title. All right, so Derek, last question. If you were forced to focus on just one thing related to content marketing for, say, the next month, 2 months, 6 months, what's the one thing you would just double down on above everything else?
I think the one thing that we're really that I'm going to focus on a lot of the next month is again that digital web experience and getting out there earlier, making sure that I'm crafting things in the way that my audience is searching. So that to me is the number one element of opportunity I'm seeing. We've designed our website certain ways. That dynamic has changed. Like I said, that buyer cycle has changed. So I'm going to invest a lot there because I think that's differentiated. I can do lots of things in social. I can do lots of things in video. I can do lots of things around. But if I'm not landing you back into a solid foundation that completes the story and that allows you to come through, then I'm leaving stuff on the table or I'm bringing you to an empty stop. So to me, that website, that conversion element that's there, and that conversion to a very intentional CTA, where am I trying to stop you? And it comes off of where did you come in? If you're coming in at an awareness phase and I'm just trying to give you a thought leadership topic to spur your thinking, then the next thing you don't want your next action to be a phone call coming in necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
Plenty of companies. I go in and I download an ebook because I've seen something that I thought was thought provoking.
Right.
I download it, and before I've even read it, I've got 10 emails. Yep. Oh, you downloaded this. Here's my package, and here's the thing I can offer you. It's like that ruins.
Can you talk on Wednesday at 2:00? That's my favorite. It's like they just assume
Are you
like, hey,
how's 2:00 today?
How's Wednesday at 2:00? Like, no, I'm not available Wednesday at 2:00. No. That's never true. Never gonna happen. No. So,
or I get text messages and calls now. That's my other favorite. I download something and then I get a phone call. Like I just downloaded it. Right. Yeah. Understanding where I'm at. But again, goes back to I've got to have the right assets that I control. I control the digital world. Yeah. And I can control where I steer you from there if I understand your intent. And I can either do that well or I can do that poorly. Right. That to me is where I'm still continuing to make my investment. I think that's becoming more and more important. And we're also seeing that even in our customer base as we think about like the buying experience, the shopping experience, a lot of things that we do as a company to support, how you control how your customer comes in, how you help curate the right things for them, how you make the right promises. All of these spaces are all driven around that customer experience and where you're at. And that continues to be the theme going forward is how do I leverage content to improve your customer experience?
That's it. That's the key. Well, Derek, if you don't mind, I've been taking notes. Let me summarize the notes I've got so far, and then just tell me if you have anything to add to it or final thoughts, or if I just missed something just completely and totally and horribly wrong. So for what's working, you said customers are coming in better researched, better informed. Digital consumption is still working. So that's social, website, third-party content. You're seeing a return to big in-person events, but they're selective about the events that they go to, which I think is really interesting. And you mentioned that content really is a continuous process now. It's not just this one and done sort of thing, but it's this continuous cycle. For what isn't working, you said customers are more hesitant towards webinars. There's a bit of fatigue, but they can still be powerful because customers are selective. So sometimes you do get a better quality of customer in the door at the webinar, but you do spend more time kind of on the customer's needs, not on pitching who you are, because they walk in the door already knowing who you are.
Yeah.
For what channels are you seeing thrive or growing? You said obviously LinkedIn, digital publications, website. We talked about making it more personalized, more unique based on when someone comes into the site or where they come to the site from. You also mentioned Chat GPT and how that will begin to interact with customers. And I like this. You said the lines between channels are blurring. Which is a really interesting perspective, and I've seen the same thing. And then you mentioned this idea of composable content, which is crafting assets that can then be reused across various channels for various purposes. And I think even to your point, can sort of be stacked on top of one another to some degree as well to create new forms of content. Which
or
is
even
really
even dissected. Really, the idea of composability isn't just reusability, but it's the ability to easily break that apart. So as you're coming up with things, I can separate that up and I can reconstruct it with other things I've created to craft a new story. So really you're modularizing your content.
That's it. Modularizing. I love that. Okay. And then last, what would you focus on? You said you'd focus on the digital web experience, getting out there early and crafting content for audience searches to answer their searches and respond to them. Derek, man, that was great. I really love this composable modular content you got going on. Any final thoughts you want to share with our audience before we wrap up here?
I think the last thought I would give is really just the other important thing for us is continuously thinking about how we're leveraging marketing talent that we have. I own portfolio marketing, but a big part of what we're doing is thinking about how does portfolio marketing tie into our demand generation efforts, tie into our events efforts, and how do we think about that holistically? And I think that's the last thing. It continues to be important as marketing evolves. Again, as channels blur, how do we strategize those things together? So that's the last thing that's a key focus for us right now.
I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Well, Derek, man, so great to get to talk to you. We're going to have you back on the show for sure. But in the meantime, man, just thanks for joining us and sharing some knowledge with us today.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Get a Word In, brought to you by Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. To learn more about Edgewise, visit www.edgewise.media. I'm your host, Adam Walker. To connect with me, check out my blog at adamjwalker.com. Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss our next great conversation about content marketing.